Well, a lot of Trump voters, the MAGA world, they're very upset about this Jeffrey Epstein stuff. They say it's a cover up. They don't know what to make of it. They feel like they were lied to. And now President Trump has spoken out about it, and people are not liking his answer or Pam Bondi's answer. I want to go through this. I want to go through stuff on RFK Jr. I want to go through cover up by Pfizer and many other stories. To help me do that, I have Alex Newman. Alex, thank you so much for joining me.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you. So some background quickly. Alex is an independent journalist and author. He has a book called The Deep State, The Invisible Government Behind the Scenes. He's also the founder of Liberty Sentinel. I'll make sure to put some links down below. Alex, what do you make of this bombshell Jeffrey Epstein wasn't blackmailing people? There's no influential people that were compromised or giving him money, or that he was feeding blackmail intelligence up the chain. I mean, we've been fed a load of you-know-what, and now it's all come crashing down that there's just nothing to see here. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Stephen. And nobody believes that. I mean, nobody believes that. I don't even think the people saying that believe that. Yesterday, I spoke with General Michael Flynn about it, and he actually didn't even believe the announcement was real. It took so long to process. That's how incredulous people are. Look, we know Jeffrey Epstein was raping and trafficking children. He was convicted of this. I mean, the record is absolutely clear. He was a child sex trafficker. We know that he was deeply involved with some of the wealthiest, most powerful people, not just in this country, but in the entire world. People like Bill Gates, people like the highest levels of our political class. So there's zero chance that there is no list of clients, and there's zero chance that people weren't being blackmailed. I mean, we have these things absolutely documented in the public record. So then the question becomes, how did we get to the point now where the FBI and the DOJ are pretending like there's nothing there? And I actually talked to Kash Patel about this before he became the head of the FBI, and he was gung-ho. Man, we're going to take these people on. We've got to punish them because otherwise they'll be back and they'll do more. So I don't have access to what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know what's going on. I can only come up with a few hypotheses. One, somebody shredded all the files, and they don't know what to do now, right? They know if they say the files were shredded, everybody's going to look really guilty. Several very prominent people have suggested that there's bipartisan pressure to stop this, and I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. We know that a lot of prominent Republicans have been compromised in these types of operations going back many years. So I think that's a plausible hypothesis. And, it's hard to think of anything beyond that. The third hypothesis is that there are people involved in the so-called investigation who are also compromised, or it touches on some element of national security so dangerous and so secret that they've all determined they have to be tight-lipped about it. But the reality is, Stephen, they are losing credibility very rapidly. Even the most loyal MAGA supporters, people who've been by Donald Trump's side for years through thick and thin, are saying, no, it's time for some clarity here. This is not going to suffice.
Yeah, it reminds me of the book 1984, right? Like, ignore your eyes and ignore your ears, and whatever the government tells you is the truth. But this thing just stinks. I mean, Glenn Beck's talking about it. Benny Johnson. I mean, like you said, some of Trump's most loyal people, they're saying this does not look good. Others are now coming out against Dan Bongino saying, dude, you built a multi 8-figure podcast based on this type of story, and now you're telling us there's nothing here. People are calling for Kash Patel to be removed, Pam Bondi to be removed. I don't know. I mean, why was somebody in the Southern District of New York fired and walked out with police for hiding files if there's nothing in those files? I mean, like, this thing just is really, really weird. Why did they let him off the hook the first time when they said he's part of the intelligence apparatus and we were told to stand down? Something just doesn't smell right about this.
Yeah, and I think of the hypotheses that I mentioned, Stephen, my instinct tells me that there's an intersection here with intelligence agencies, probably American intelligence agencies, and probably some foreign intelligence agencies, where people at the highest levels are saying, look, there's a lot of people implicated in this. If the truth gets out about this, it's going to make spycraft very difficult in the future. And there are going to be a lot of prominent people all across the upper echelons of society who are going to be exposed. And my guess is somebody made a national security assessment that for the good of the country, for the good of the intelligence apparatus, this cannot be talked about anymore. But it's not going to work. It's at the point now where Democrats, Republicans, Trump supporters, Trump haters, everybody understands. And we have to remember as well, Stephen, that we're talking here about children being raped. This isn't like, a story about adults being dumb. This isn't, this is one of the most disgusting, abominable crimes that can be committed by a human being. There are innocent victims who need justice. There are people who will be victimized in the future if the perpetrators aren't brought to justice. And we know that Jeffrey Epstein was not operating alone. This was not a one-man intelligence gathering operation, right? He was connected to a lot of very powerful people around the world. And we're going to have to get some answers. This is not a story that's going to blow over. This is not a story that, CNN and a couple of government officials are going to say there's nothing there and everybody's going to say, okay, on to the next scandal. This is going to have answers, and probably soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. The one answer that we got just an hour ago, let me pull that up on the screen. President Trump is asked about Epstein. He does not respond well. He does not like it. And then Pam Bondi takes over from there. Let's go ahead and watch that together.
Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the minutes?
Yeah, sure. If
Pam, could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night.
All right. I don't know that that's going to be satisfying. People on the left, the Trump haters, they're already saying, well, he's connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Of course he wants this conversation to go away. I don't personally believe that. I think if he was, that story would have been used a long time ago. But I mean, there's also this idea that, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, they can only go off of what they have now. Why couldn't stuff have been destroyed? There's been stuff destroyed from Pfizer. There's been stuff covered up with the Simpsonwood stuff with vaccines and chronic illness. There's been stuff covered up. Like every major catastrophe, there is cover up. I'm just wondering if they are being genuine, because I don't believe Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi they're not known to be liars. Like there's not a record of that. I'm just wondering if they're going, listen, based on what we have, this is what we have. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a real possibility. And we've seen that over and over again with very sensitive intelligence operations. I mean, back when the church committee hearings were investigating the intelligence agencies, we had huge numbers of files go missing permanently. MK Ultra, we're never going to know the full scope of the CIA's mind control operations because those files are gone. They don't exist anymore. Even if a future head of the CIA wanted to come clean, they just don't have the files anymore. And that's what the Senate found when they were investigating this. My guess is something very similar has happened here, but I think they need to be more honest about this. If that's what actually happened, if files are missing, if files have disappeared, if hard drives have disappeared, if hard drives have been bleached, so to speak, then they need to come out and say that. And then we need a thorough investigation to find out who exactly had access to those, who had clearance to look at that, because this is not something that's going to go away. And I can see the president is frustrated with this. He wants to talk about other things, but this is not something that's going to go away. Again, there are children who are victims in this case, and there are very powerful people who quite clearly have been blackmailed as a result of this. And I think for me, the idea that Epstein was not connected with intelligence agencies is preposterous. There's no way he got off on child sex trafficking charges with the equivalent of a slap on the wrist without having some very, very clear connection to intelligence operations.
Yeah, somebody likely called in some kind of favor in order to squash that story. I mean, that's a big one. So, and you know, former CIA John Kiriakou, he's been on my show. He was on Fox News saying just very similar to what you said. Let me just play that real quick.
I'm not blaming the FBI director, Kash Patel, or the deputy director, Dan Bongino. I think that layer beneath them, that's part of what we like to call the deep state, has taken this bull by the horns, and they've probably destroyed information. Look at what the CIA did in 1975 after Congress ordered that it release all of its files related to an operation called MK Ultra. The director of the CIA went back to headquarters and ordered everything to be destroyed. And in the end, only about 20% of the documents survived. We're still learning about the FBI's operations against Martin Luther King 55 years after the fact. So now we're supposed to believe that everybody's telling the truth, that there were no files, there were no dossiers. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it because I know how these people operate.
All right, so very, very similar to what you said there. Let me switch gears with you. Pfizer announced that HHS Secretary RFK Jr. removing the forced COVID vaccination of children is dangerous. They also said, coincidentally, we won't be able to release our findings on whether this vaccine is damaging to children until 2030. So, like, what the heck is going on here? On the one hand, they want to continue to force this experimental chemical concoction into our children. At the same time, they're saying we need years to study how damaging this is. Your thoughts on this situation?
Well, this is so obviously unacceptable, Stephen. It would almost be like a parody of Pfizer to have something like this, and yet it's reality. So I think we have several things we need to consider here. Obviously, Pfizer is out of control. Obviously, Pfizer has made enormous amounts of money off the backs of the taxpayers whose faces it is now spitting in. And when you listen to the revelations by former Pfizer Vice President Michael Yeadon, absolutely stunning information about what he thinks this company was doing. When you have a company like this who is being criticized for pumping out products at taxpayer expense that can hurt people that they are immune from liability on, and then saying, we're not even going to let you know if this is hurting people for another 5 years. It's so astoundingly ludicrous. Again, it's very hard to believe that they would even make this argument, but here we are. And so as far as I'm concerned, nobody ought to feel any kind of obligation to respect any recommendation, whether from Pfizer or from the government, if we can't have access to this information about whether this is hurting our children, period.
Yeah. I mean, my very first thought, Alex, is this dangerous to not let children get this, or is this dangerous to Pfizer's profits?
Clearly dangerous to Pfizer's profits, and also now by extension, everybody who's in bed with Pfizer, which would include most of the mainstream media, right? How many newscasts have we seen? Brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer. Everybody's implicated in this. The politicians who forced everybody to take Pfizer's products, the politicians who gave immunity to Pfizer from liability, both under the PrEP Act and, of course, for the injections they're pushing on kids going back to 1986. So there are some real questions here. And I don't think they're going to be able to get away with this much longer. This whole, you have to take it, but we can't tell you what's in it. We can't tell you whether it's bad for you. I mean, that's just silly. And frankly, it looks like the American people have had enough.
Let me ask you something. Are you feeling more tired, weaker, and slower than you used to? As we age, we naturally start losing muscle, our metabolism slows down, and our energy takes a hit. But it doesn't mean we have to settle for decline. Fortify by Bright Core Nutrition is my go-to solution. It's packed with all 9 essential amino acids your body needs to stay strong, energized, and sharp. This is the real deal. Fortify helps build and preserve lean muscle, speeds up metabolism and burns more calories, fights fatigue and recovers faster. It boosts serotonin for better mood, focus, and sleep. And unlike protein shakes or powders that often get wasted or turn into sugar or fat, Fortify is fully absorbed and goes straight to work where your body needs it the most. Right now, just for my audience, you can get 25% off with code Gardner by clicking the link below, or call my friends at Brightcore at 888-908-4425 for up to 50% off and free shipping. Again, that's 888-908-4425, or snap the QR code on the right-hand side. Yeah, my children are old enough now that I'm trying to think of a medicine that's just for kids. But like when I was growing up, right, there was a cough syrup called Dimetap, right? Like imagine, we go back in time and they say, Dimetap is the only way to get better, but we're not going to show you whether it actually gives you lung cancer or not, even though there is ubiquitous evidence that it's giving you cancer, right? Like there's so much evidence. I mean, all of a sudden children are having heart attacks. Children are getting cancer at rapid rates. I mean, you have one of the top doctors in the world, the guy that owns the LA Times, he's a doctor. He's coming out saying, I've never seen this level of cancer in children. And Pfizer is saying, we're not going to be able to get that data to you for another 5 years. Here's another question I have. Why is Pfizer in charge of policing Pfizer? Like this is like when the cigarette companies said, our lawyers and scientists have determined that no, cigarettes do not give you cancer, brought to you by the people that sell you cancer sticks. Like, why are they governing their own data?
I think the really simple reason, Stephen, and this is going to sound rather insulting, I think, to the American people, but the simple reason is they've got the best lobbyists. They have so much money to throw around on Capitol Hill that what they say goes, at least until the American people have been so fed up with it that they demand a stop. That's the only way that the American people are going to be able to overcome the endless amounts of money that Big Pharma is pumping into the political process, is by people getting so furious that they actually get on the phone with their member of Congress and say, no more. I don't care how much Pfizer wrote you in a check for your last campaign. We've got to stop these people. And I think we're getting there very quickly. I think moms and dads are fed up. And you're right. The evidence on this is so overwhelming. In fact, it was overwhelming back in 2021 when we weren't allowed to talk about it. The number of reports coming into the ther system, the number of observations, anecdotal evidence, even the Pfizer documents that people like Naomi Wolf got a hold of showed that this was a catastrophe, a slow motion train wreck. They were pretty effective in suppressing it then. They're not effective in suppressing it anymore. People know, and people are mad.
Oh, you mean the documents that they wanted to keep sealed for 75 years?
Yes.
Like in what medication would you say, hey, we think it might be killing a lot of people. Let's go ahead and bury the scientific data for 75 years. Like, make it illegal to talk about, make it illegal to look up. That data cannot be used for 75 years. Now, thank goodness this Judge Pittman said, no. A medical group cannot hide damaging data for 75 years. So start releasing it. So then what do? They start the slow trickle of letting that information out. I just, it's so insulting to the American people to pretend like this was a miracle when in fact it has caused irreparable damage and death for so many people. Hopefully RFK will be able to get a hold of this. But my understanding from talking to people around him is as much authority and power as he has, once something gets approved, it is almost impossible to get it unapproved. And I think that's the uphill battle he's fighting.
Yeah, no doubt. And he is making really significant waves. I mean, he's got such a big target on his back. He just recently came out and revealed that the CDC knew that the hepatitis B vaccine was associated with over 1,100% increase in the risk of autism in children. And not only did they know that would be bad enough, then they suppressed that and continued peddling this thing that they knew was going to increase the chances of your child getting autism by over 1,100%. If this is not criminal, I don't know what is. And if you were the maker of these products, or you were a government bureaucrat who was involved in these shady operations, you could understand why you might be panicking right now and calling RFK mean names and telling your hacks in the media that you pay for to say mean things about him, and telling your politicians whose campaigns you funded that they need to take action against this information coming out and against the people responsible.
It is interesting, during congressional hearings, the members of Congress who have received the most money from Big Pharma are the ones attacking him the most, grilling him, trying to shame him. In fact, there's a group, I broke this story a couple of days ago, the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, a memo leaked. This is a group that does, I guess, consulting for Pfizer, Merck, Novavax, and others. But this memo leaks that they're secretly paying $2 million to unseat RFK Jr. before September because they're terrified that he's going to link them to chronic illness, autism, and other stuff. What are your thoughts on these groups trying to remove RFK Jr.? He must be over the target. They're terrified of him.
No question about it. And that was clear to me even before he took office. I mean, he was talking about the CIA weaponizing public health. I mean, he came on my show and talked about these things. CIA overthrowing governments, weaponizing public health, killing members of his family. I mean, these are the types of things that nobody's supposed to be talking about. So when you look at the power of Big Pharma, I mean, we're talking one of the largest and most profitable industries in the world with total protection from immunity from liability. The power that they have is astounding. And then along comes a man like Robert F. Kennedy who says, not only have they been robbing us blind, they have been hurting our children, right? It parallels in very interesting ways the Epstein case. We have here people who are deliberately harming children at risk of being exposed. And so it's no surprise that they would be willing to spend any amount of money possible. It's no surprise that they would be willing to do anything, including illegal activities, to try to stop him. And so I think people need to watch for this strategy now. They're going to be trying to drive a wedge between Donald Trump and RFK. They're going to tell Trump that RFK is not MAGA, that he's not loyal, that he's this, that, and the other. It is absolutely essential that these people be exposed. And I'm so grateful for you, Stephen, and the work that you're doing exposing this, because if we can get ahead of it, if we can show people what's happening, that the campaign is coming, that they're going to sink huge amounts of money into trying to discredit RFK Jr., then hopefully we can mitigate the damage.
Yeah, it's, once you understand how a magic trick works, you're not tricked ever again. And that's what I want my audience to understand, is like they are using a playbook in order to manipulate, trick, use fear, weaponize you against your neighbor and your family members in order to profit and cover up their liability. In the case of vaccines, they can literally kill you and get away with murder because they have full liability protection. And so I don't know that that will be revoked, but if they can get pharmaceuticals off of TV, that changes so much. If they can do these tests, vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and then actually reveal the true data to us, I think that RFK Jr. is doing really miraculous things. You're constantly keeping an eye on what the United Nations is doing. Trump has pulled away from that. They don't really like that, but you broke a story about how they were investigating the United States and then released a report. Tell me about the UN's, coming in and investigating America.
Yeah, so the invitation for them to come in and investigate us actually came during the Biden administration, and they finally just released a report just a few weeks ago. Basically, they concluded that Donald Trump and his policies on education and his proposals on education are a violation of UN international human rights laws and so on, and therefore need to be stopped. So the UN special rapporteur who did the investigation, a Pakistani lady named Farida Shahid, in her report, she condemns the fact that private schools are not heavily regulated yet in the United States. She condemns the fact that some states like Florida, Texas, and others have been passing laws to try to protect children from certain types of indoctrination, the racial stuff, the LGBT stuff. She calls that censorship. She condemns what she calls book bans, basically efforts to get pornography out of the classrooms, out of the schools. She condemns the fact that the federal government doesn't basically run education. And she acknowledges in there that the 10th Amendment doesn't give the federal government any responsibility over education. But she says under the UN's international human rights agreements and conventions, the federal government has to do these things. And there's something in there that's really, really critical. And I think at first glance, people don't understand how important it is. She says the federal government and the states in this country need to redefine education as a human right. And I think at first glance, people think, oh, well, what's wrong with having education as a human right? Well, first of all, it's a radically different conception of rights than our founding fathers had, than Americans have traditionally had. In our system, God gives us rights, and those rights come from God. They're inherent in us. They're not given to us by government. They don't require the government to take stuff from our neighbor to give stuff from us. It's like God gave you a right to life when he said, thou shalt not murder. God gave you a right to property when he said, thou shalt not steal. And when you look at the UN's human rights mechanisms, you can start with the foundational text, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. It's very revealing about what they're up to, right? There is no God. Your rights come from government, and your rights are totally different than we have understood. So, for example, in Article 29 says none of your rights or freedoms may be used contrary to the United Nations. It's like, imagine having a First Amendment to our Constitution that says Congress can't make laws against your free speech unless Congress doesn't like your free speech, in which case they can regulate it and throw you in jail. That's what this is. And then you go to Article 26 of this document. It says education shall be compulsory and education shall further the activities of the United Nations. Well, what happens if the education you provide your children doesn't further the activities of the UN? Well, you're depriving your child of UN dictated human rights. So this is part of an effort, Stephen, to globalize education. And when she references all these treaties and conventions, she's absolutely right. These UN agreements clearly say we need international standards, we need international protections, etc. And so they're very upset with the United States that we haven't moved as far in that direction as they would like us to move. And frankly, this, I think, really should outrage Americans, that we have a dictators club. I mean, literally, the UN Human Rights Council, totally run by dictatorships, mass murdering regimes, telling us that we need to change our system of education to suit their demands. It is an outrage.
Yeah. Give us your money so that we can control you. Give us your allegiance so we can control you.
Yep.
I mean, Democrats literally were running on the government needs to do more for you, and we need to win back people's belief that the government is good and can do something for you. And it's just so erroneous. We're learning how not good the government really is. Then you go outside of America and it gets even worse. Alex, thank you so much for taking time to come on. If people want to follow you or join your newsletter, where can I push them towards?
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Always an honor and a pleasure to join you. LibertySentinel.org is my personal website. TheNewAmerican.com. I serve as senior editor there. We've got a free newsletter there as well. And then ClassicalConversations.com for people who are interested in homeschooling help.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'll put those direct links down below. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, sir. You as well.